Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app, which is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics awaits you, and I would love to get your thoughts on the day's topics. The text and the phone line are the same number for your convenience. 719-24/7-1313. I'll also throw out my Twitter account at Gingerly Tweets. My activity's upping a little bit on that platform. Maybe yours is as well. And if you want to chat there, we could do it. I'll be checking it. Refreshing it. Broncos Nuggets, the normal, teams. I want to start with the Avs though, because Chris McFarland, after that trade yesterday, the Avalanche acquiring Sharks goaltender Mackenzie Blackwood, it essentially in exchange for Alexander Georgiev, Nikolai Kovalenko going to San Jose. The great coincidence of that is that a Kovalenko that used to play for the Avalanche that is related to Nikolai was traded in the Patrick Waugh deal. Please do not let that alter your expectation for this trade. Very different trade. Not saying it's not good, but Mackenzie Blackwood has never been mistaken for Patrick Waugh, nor will he ever be. But there are other pieces going the other way, and the Avs had to eat some salary. And I think that's an important piece to this puzzle. Chris McFarland, the Avalanche general manager, talked about this yesterday. And one of the quotes that he had really stuck out to me. He said, "I think it shook us to the core with the start." Talking about the way Alexander Georgiev played to start the season. Think about that. Think about what he's saying. Sometimes I get accused of being a little bit of an alarmist when it comes to various things. And sometimes it's fair. I won't lie. Sometimes I can be a little panicky. And maybe you were accused of being an alarmist after you watch Alexander Georgiev come out and have the start that he did. But here's the general manager of the Colorado Avalanche saying we were alarmed from the jump. And yesterday, the lion's share of the credit I gave the Colorado Avalanche was the fact that they did not wait till the trade deadline. I mean, they have all this time. They have the holidays. They have into January, into February, where they could have let this thing play out, see if maybe Scott Wedgwood being a more capable backup would help them out, if maybe you would push Alexander Georgiev. Georgiev was pretty good the other night against Detroit. In fact, this is the first time in many years where an NHL team has completely swapped out its goaltender room before Christmas. It's rare for a team to do what the Avs have now done. But I want to give credit to them for doing that and not waiting. Because it's just wasted time. People think about the first part until the holidays in the NHL and the NBA, and they dismiss it and say it doesn't matter. And the real star of the season for the NBA is on Christmas. And I get it. Game 1 is a little bit different than game 56. Like, I understand that. but especially in the NHL, it's about point accumulation. Okay, history has said that whatever position you hope to be in, you better kind of be around there by the time the calendar turns. And you see this right now with the Denver Nuggets. People who are trying to put out the fire are going to say, look, the Nuggets are only 2 games back of the second seed. It's okay. Everything's all right. But the fact of the matter is they're the 7th seed. How many teams lie between the Denver Nuggets and the 2nd seed or even the 3rd seed? There are a few teams that not only do the Nuggets have to be better, but these other teams in front of them have to be worse. And this idea that only being so many points, so many games behind is not that big of a deal. It's always about how many teams you have to jump over. That's really what it's about. And if you're going to make a run for a division crown, you better be within striking distance when January rolls around. Because if not, you're just hoping for a team that has played like take Winnipeg's a great example, right? So yeah, Winnipeg's not going to continue to play at the level they played at to begin the year. That's an unsustainable start. We've never seen Winnipeg or any team start off the season the way that Winnipeg did. Okay, so there's going to be some regression. But if you're not, within a certain amount of points, you can't ask Winnipeg to suddenly fall off a cliff and the Avalanche to click to the point that those two switch places. So Chris McFarland said it to start the season. They didn't want to wait. I believe I don't remember what game number he said, but he said points count the same in game 1 as they do game 81 or something to that effect. So this was a team going into the year that was expecting to accumulate points right off the bat. And that's why the play of Alexander Georgiev was so alarming. And Chris McFarland looked at both his goaltending situation and where the Avs were in the standings and said, we got to do something. Because if we just drag our feet and wait till the trade deadline when a lot of business normally gets done, one, we're going to have more competition, right? More goalies get hurt, more teams all of a sudden think that they're only a goaltender away. There are going to be more teams bidding on Mackenzie Blackwood's services the longer this goes. So that's one thing. And then the second part of it is how much further behind do the Avalanche fall before they make a move? And at that point, is it too late? And so, in addition to the quality of player that they acquired, and this is a guy that you can reasonably expect to be better than Alexander Georgiev. We got to see it, and we won't see it tonight, by the way, because apparently Mackenzie Blackwood is ill. He's not playing tonight in Pittsburgh. It's got to hit. We got to find out, right? But all you can do is go off of what Mackenzie Blackwood has been in San Jose and what Alexander Georgiev has been, and you look at a guy that has a 3.00 goals allowed average and a .910 save percentage, despite facing the 5th most shots of any goalie in the NHL. Conversely, Alexander Georgiev has been statistically one of the worst goalies in the NHL, only facing the 25th most shots. So you can reasonably expect, given what Mackenzie Blackwood has been, that he will be better with a better supporting cast. But the Avalanche identified it and moved on it quickly. The decisiveness, I think, is what stands out from this. And you look at what they have done with the second line center. You lose Nazem Kadri. Obviously, that was going to happen. It's a salary cap sport. Sorry. It's not baseball. You can't pay everybody. They try Comfer. They get Ryan Johansson. 9 months later, they swing a significant deal to get Casey Middlestat. This is a front office led by Chris McFarland that does not wait. Because the mark of a good front office is not that they make the fewest mistakes. Because you're going to make mistakes. It's an imperfect system. You're judging where it comes. The draft's a perfect example. Right? In every sport. It's a crapshoot. Why is Bo Nix working like this and Paxton Lynch didn't? Is Bo Nix infinitely more talented than Paxton Lynch was? No. No, he's not. But he's got the right traits, the right work ethic, and he's got the right support system around him. It's the right time right now for the Denver Broncos to develop a quarterback. You're going to make mistakes, even if you go through every piece of information available to you to make the right decision, and you still could miss. That's not what we're asking the front offices of the teams that we root for to do, to be perfect, to never make a mistake. We're asking them, if they make a mistake, to fix it. And this Avalanche front office has shown in recent history that they are not afraid to say, you know what, we messed up. Or the guy that we acquired all of a sudden isn't the guy that we expected him to be. There was a time where Georgiev looked like the guy. But they identified like this isn't right. They didn't let one playoff series against Winnipeg, setting aside game one, mind you, cloud their judgment, and to the point that they're like, oh, we absolutely have the right guy. So if he says they're alarmed about the start, guess what? They were pondering this last year. They didn't just wake up the morning of the Vegas game going, we have our guy, and then after that game in Vegas go, oh my God, no, we don't. The same conversations that you and I have been having for months about Alexander Georgiev. Who cares how many goalie wins he has? Look at the other numbers. Chris McFarland was looking at those numbers. Now, he's never going to let it out that he's having second thoughts about Georgiev. But listening to him yesterday and seeing how quickly the Avs have moved, clearly the Avalanche have been thinking long and hard about this. And they had the start to the season that they did, and Chris McFarland at that point was like, okay, it's time to move here. And I give him credit for that. Don't let your mistake just continue to sit there hoping it's going to get better. And I don't want to say that acquiring Alexander Georgiev was a mistake. So maybe I shouldn't say mistake. I mean, there are other mistakes. Ryan Johansson, that was a mistake. There are some that are mistakes. There are some that just it goes the wrong way at some point. And that's what it was with Alexander Georgiev. They bet on a guy that had been a backup but had shown some signs. He got into that team, and you're like, okay, They have something here. And then the whole thing with Valeri Nichushkin happened in Seattle and threw everything off, and that was the main focus. Then they come back last year. Georgiev wins a lot of games, but the underlying numbers aren't great. He balls out for a series against Winnipeg. They get bounced. A lot of the attention still on Valeri Nichushkin, but you wonder about Georgiev a little bit. Then the beginning of the season happens, then you're really worried about the guy. But whether it's a mistake or whether it's a good decision that just goes wrong for one reason or another, don't sit back and hope that it will swing back the other way. Don't compound it by making other moves that hurt you in other areas in order to make up for your mistake. Make a move that directly addresses the problem. And that's the type of trade that they made. And they had to eat some salary, right? That was the admission of a mistake in many ways for the Avs. The fact that they had to eat some of Georgiev's salary to make it happen. That Georgiev wasn't a good enough player that the Sharks went, we'll just take him at his current value. But they're okay with that. Because they saw it. It wasn't going to be the guy to get the Avs to where they wanted to go. And they moved swiftly, and they got out in front of the market, and they got a deal done for a guy that you can reasonably expect to be an upgrade at that position. Now, take your thoughts on that. 719-247-1313. The question that many people are asking, and many people have asked me over the last 24 hours, what's the Nuggets move? Who's the Nuggets version of Mackenzie Blackwood? We'll ponder that subject next on Extra Sports 1300. So Avs make their move. What about the Nuggets? That has been the number one question that I have been asked over the last 24 hours. What move will the Nuggets make? Both of these teams seemed, or I guess still currently, let's see Mackenzie Blackwood on the Avs, see how this goes. But both teams, to one degree or another, seem like they're missing something, that something's not quite right. So if the Avs go out and make a move to address what has been the biggest sore spot on their team, could the Nuggets do something similar? And the NBA rumor mill is starting to churn a little bit. Right? About a quarter of the way through the season, people are getting pretty concrete opinions about what these teams are. And you're seeing a lot of names thrown around, and Shams Charania, now of ESPN, put out a few morsels of information to get people salivating a little bit over the idea of some big-time NBA trades. One name that has been thrown out is Jimmy Butler. Okay, the Heat are now willing to listen to offers on Jimmy Butler. For the longest time, they tried to trade Tyler Hero. Of course, he was the centerpiece of their what they were offering up for Damian Lillard before Milwaukee got him. And now perhaps Miami's looking in a different direction and acknowledging that maybe it would be best to part ways with Jimmy Butler and put somebody with Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, which at this point, you look at the layout of the East, Boston is an absolute beast. New York got better. Orlando is on the come up. They're winning games even without Paulo Banchero. And tonight they play in the NBA Cup without Banchero and Franz Wagner. But Orlando is a team that is on the rise. Milwaukee is looking like they're figuring things out. I think where this comes from is Miami understanding that maybe right now isn't either right now is not the time to push to try and win the East, or what they have is certainly not good enough to make a push in the East. And I think there are arguments for both, that Miami should take a beat, look a little bit younger. Not to say they don't try to make the playoffs or anything like that, but you look at the East and there are some teams that are ahead of Miami as currently constructed, and the only way out for Miami to get back into that conversation is to make a move. They've tried Tyler Hero. It has not worked. They have not found the right trade for him, so now they're dangling Jimmy Butler. Would Jimmy Butler forget for a moment whether the money will match? Because I have done way more math than I would ever like to try and figure out what the Nuggets could do financially. This whole idea that they gain so much flexibility by letting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope walk, I'm having a difficult time seeing it, because it looks like this team it's very hard for the Nuggets to make salaries work. But just set that aside for a moment. Just as a fit, Jimmy Butler on the Denver Nuggets, because Shams is saying that Jimmy Butler wants to play for a contender, win now team. Makes all the sense in the world. Nuggets would be that. I don't understand why people would be interested in Jimmy Butler other than Jimmy Butler has actually been an all-star, and that is intriguing. Let's see what Nikola Jokic does with a player who's been an all-star that still is at the tail end of his prime, but still maybe in his prime. One of the biggest issues for this team, setting aside my theory that perhaps Michael Malone's message isn't quite getting through to his team, but I'm willing to put that aside given what happened against Atlanta and see where the Nuggets go from here. Defense, bench, Jamal Murray. That's what it looks like to me. They cannot trade Jamal Murray till March. Okay? Because of the contract that he signed, they cannot deal him on December 15th like other guys who sign deals in the offseason. So you can't deal him. So you're dealing Michael Porter, right? Essentially. You're not going to trade Aaron Gordon. That would be lunacy. And you're not trading Nikola Jokic. And you have to give up something of value. The Miami Heat are not a team that feels to me with Bam Adebayo, a team that wants to, get into the Cooper Flag or whoever this kid that just signed with BYU, get in the sweepstakes for him next year. Like Miami wants to make a move to maybe take one step back to take two steps forward. So to me, it's Michael Porter. Okay? Whether that would be enough to get the deal done, let's set that aside. Even though it's very much a part of the Nuggets' problem here. You're going to give up Michael Porter, who has, and it's only because Aaron Gordon's been hurt, but has been this season consistently the Nuggets' second best player, who is statistically having his best season. And by the way, has played in nearly every game, if not every game, coming off of a season where he missed like 2 games. Okay, I get what he's been in the playoffs. I'm not saying he's perfect, but I'm saying he's outside Nikola Jokic. He's about the best that the Nuggets have right now. Okay, so you're going to deal him to bring in a guy who is a bit mercurial, right? Can kind of sulk, kind of pout at times, who can't many times be bothered with the regular season, is known for stepping up his game once the postseason rolls around. But during the regular season, you're kind of looking at the guy and saying, isn't there more that he's capable of? And oh, by the way, he's not the most reliable when it comes to injuries. Sound like anybody the Nuggets have right now? You're going to trade Michael Porter for essentially an older version of Jamal Murray. That the fix? That's the move? I don't make that deal. And by the way, to make the salaries work, it would be Porter, Zeke Naji, Dario Saric, and you'd probably have to throw in a first-round pick as a sweetener. And even then, I don't know if Miami goes for it. Miami going to sign up for 4 more years of Zeke Naji at $8 million? But let's just say that they were interested in that trade package. To me, and this is where it's so difficult for the Denver Nuggets right now, you're bringing in somebody who creates a lot of the same issues that Jamal Murray does. Now, the upside is the same as it is with Jamal Murray in many ways, right? But you're inviting a lot of the same pain, for lack of a better word, with Jimmy Butler. And in order to get him, you're getting rid of one of the guys that actually is pulling his weight. Right? A guy that's actually doing his job. The guy's knocking down 3-pointers. The guy's playing every game. And most nights, he's the second best player outside of Nikola Jokic. That is why the Avalanche's trade of Mackenzie Blackwood is so perfect. Yeah, they gave up Kovalenko. Okay, I don't think anybody was thinking that Kovalenko was going to be the second coming. Quality young prospect, absolutely. But not a difference maker on this year's team. Plus, you have Callum Ritchie behind him. You have Ivan on the team right now. Essentially, what the Avs were able to do and why it's such a great trade is that they took the problem and they replaced him with somebody that could help fix the problem. But the situation that the Nuggets find themselves in is that in order to help the problem, they are going to have to take somebody that is not the problem to fix the problem. So a team that already is unwilling to take 3-pointers in a 3-point shooting league, you're going to give that guy up in order to address this other issue. Would Jimmy Butler be better defensively? Yeah. He would. But it's like you're creating another problem or you're exacerbating another problem to fix one instead of, because honestly, at this point, in an ideal world, yeah, trading Zeke Naji or whatever and getting some Bruce Brown back or something like that would be ideal. But in the world of you have to offer up something of value, and I don't know where his value is at right now, but it's Jamal Murray. Right? Or it's offering up Christian Brown for a veteran version of Christian Brown. I don't know, like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, for instance. Not that somebody like that is available. That's what makes the Nuggets predicament so difficult, is that the only way that they can make a move, if that you think is the ultimate answer, they are going to have to take something that is actually working to address something that's not, at the risk of making that other thing worse. The Avalanche did not hurt any other part of their roster in a real way by making this deal. And they addressed their biggest need. So Jimmy Butler, to me, not the answer. Intriguing. I get the name value. I don't see it. I don't see it working. To say nothing of Miami's interest in what the Nuggets would offer up. And I've went through so many machinations. I just don't know where the Nuggets go. And let's say they make this deal where they trade Zeke Naji and their last remaining first-round pick that they're eligible to trade and get a rotational piece. Okay. So the rotational piece sounds to me like a bench player. So you're slightly improving the bench, which still needs help. I would agree. Is it going to make significant improvements to the 24th ranked defense in the NBA? Is it going to heal Jamal Murray? Is it going to get Jamal Murray to play more like the Jamal Murray that we would expect to see? So if the Nuggets are moving Zeke Naji in a first-round pick for a rotational piece, then okay, that's a good move. But I don't think it addresses bigger issues. Their bench is not their biggest issue. I would say their defense is their biggest issue, followed closely by the ineffectiveness and lack of availability when it comes to Jamal Murray. I'm of the same mindset. You see the Avs make that move. The natural thing is you look across the hallway at Ball Arena and say, okay, now you go. I don't know. I don't know if there's one there to be made. I certainly think that the Nuggets will make a move. I just don't know if it will be of the significance that the Mackenzie Blackwood deal has the potential to be. Which kind of begs the question, why, if there was some sort of a standstill between the team and Jamal Murray, do you rush to get his extension done? Seven 24/7 13-13. Take your thoughts, Avs, Nuggets. Avs in action tonight against the Penguins. Nuggets not back in action until Friday against the LA Clippers. Even more of a reason why they were so fortunate that they had a game on Sunday. Could you imagine if the Wizards game was the last game for a week? Would have been real ugly. 719-24/7 13-13. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and we want to make it even better with $1,000 towards your winter wish list. You can use it for holiday shopping, travel, or to treat yourself. Enter this national contest at xtrasports1300.com for a chance to fulfill your winter wish list. Sponsored locally by Downtown Colorado Springs and Downtown CS.com. I found this humorous today, but you know what? Credit where credit is due. Major League Baseball's winter meetings are going on right now. And there's another Japanese import that everybody's all hot and bothered about. His name is Roki Sasaki. Dude throws over 100. He was on the World Baseball Classic team where Shohei Ohtani struck out Mike Trout. So he's being posted, and he's affordable like Ohtani was. Right? That's why the frenzy was the way it is. Not just because Ohtani was Ohtani, but the fact that a team like the Reds could get involved in it. Everyone could be involved because everyone could afford contracts. Same thing with this guy. It's not the days of Daisuke Matsuzaka and Hideki Matsui where it's like, okay, there's 3 teams that can afford him. Everyone can theoretically afford him. So the agent for this guy who has just been posted and the bidding will begin, confirmed, according to Thomas Harding of MLB.com, that the Colorado Rockies were one of the first 3 teams to reach out. Now, there is 0 chance that this guy is going to bet on himself pitching at Coors for his Major League Baseball career. This guy's been waiting how long to get a chance to play in the major leagues? He's going to choose. He can choose anybody. The money's all going to be the same, right? Rockies can't outbid really anybody significantly. So the money's all the same, and he's going to look at Colorado and go, I'm going there. But credit where credit is due, at least the Rockies reached out. Because if memory serves, they weren't even really, either they weren't going after Shohei Ohtani or they kind of feigned interest. I don't remember what the story was. But when a guy that throws 100 miles an hour cannot be bought by the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, now I guess we have to include in these conversations, the Rockies should be all over. They should be the links that Cohen went to secure the services of Soto. You know, did you hear that? Like he and his wife flew out to LA to meet with Juan Soto at his house out there, and then they had him out for dinner in New York. And like the Rockies should be doing everything within their power. Even though it's a futile effort, this is the type of guy that they can actually afford. He's already good. They should be doing everything they can. So kudos to the Rockies, even though there is 0 chance that this guy is going to sign with the Rockies. Good on them for at least being one of the first, because of how low the bar is set. I was actually surprised to read that the Rockies were one of the first teams to reach out. I'm surprised that the Rockies knew that this guy from Japan was being posted, that they were aware of this guy. I just assume that they don't follow baseball in Japan. So good on them for reaching out. I mean, they're not going to get him, but you know, the meme of the poorly drawn whatever character that is poking the thing with a stick. Come on, Rockies, do something. Well, they did something. They can offer as much money as everybody else. But much of and they did sign Tiaro Estrada. I think that's his name. Utility guy. He's going to play second base. Brendan Rodgers is bye-bye. If you're not following along, they non-tendered him, so he's gone. So they have some prospects, but they want a veteran there. So they did that today as well. And that concludes the Rockies portion of the program. A lot of talk still about Juan Soto and who got the better of it. And it's natural for the Yankees and their fans to kind of be like, we don't need Juan Soto. We're not paying that. We're the Yankees, which essentially is what happened. There are reports that Boris went to the Yankees and said, here's what my client has. Will you match it? And they said no. Arrogant? Absolutely. Bad baseball decision? Maybe not. Now, the worst thing, and all sports fans do this, kick the guy on the way out. He wasn't that good to begin with, blah, 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 blah. Okay, Juan Soto is one of the 4 best players in the world. I went over it. It's Ohtani, it's Judge, it's Betts, and then it's Soto, and Bryce Harper's right behind. That's the list. Okay, so don't rematch. Well, he's not a very good defender. Okay, last time I checked, there's a universal DH. So, whatever. But as arrogant as that might be from the Yankees to say, oh, we don't need to be the highest bidder. We're the Yankees. If he wants to play for us, he'll play for us. If they take $765 million, let's say they were close, and there are varying reports that they were $5 million off, $10 million off, whatever. If they have that money that they are willing to spend, then go spend it. Nolan Arenado, our old friend, didn't really work out for him in St. Louis. Did it? Not really. He's even willing to move to first base in order to facilitate a trade. There are a couple of pitchers, Max Fried and some others that are available. If the Yankees take $60 million in total contracts and divvy that out among Nolan Arenado and Alex Bregman, put Arenado at first, Bregman at third, or vice versa, whatever. You just like the Dodgers with Mookie Betts. Just figure it out. Just get a great player, stick him somewhere. He'll be fine. Although that's what the Rockies tried to do with Chris Bryant. So I guess I should hesitate when I say something like that. But anyway, corner, infield, interchangeable. So you get Bregman, you get Arenado, you get Max Fried, and Fried looks like he is going to be a Yankee. And now all of a sudden you say, all right, in a way we can be better off without Juan Soto. Because look at everything else that we were able to get. Because we didn't have to pay Soto. Mets got one guy. Yankees got 2 pitchers, 2 corner infielders. And you watch the World Series. The Yankees are really not on the Dodgers level. The Dodgers are just plugging Mookie Betts wherever they have, oh, we don't have a right fielder. Mookie Betts, you're a right fielder. Like, they're literally taking one of the 4 best baseball players on planet Earth and just plugging them into whatever spot they don't have somebody, which is only one place at any given time because they're so stacked that they only have one opening and they just put Mookie Betts there. The Yankees are not nearly top to bottom as good as the Dodgers, right? And that World Series showed out. Bullpen, lineup, there were just too many holes in that lineup, and the Dodgers had 0 holes in their lineup. The Dodgers had 0 holes in their bullpen, 0 holes in their rotation. Yankees have a lot missing. So if they address all those things, then yeah, they're better off without just paying Juan Soto. because the Yankees with Juan Soto wasn't good enough to win a World Series. Now, the Mets can make, and the Mets aren't as good as the Dodgers, right? But they can make an argument here that, hey, look how far we went with the team we had, and now we're adding Juan Soto. Juan Soto for the Mets could represent more of a missing piece than with the Yankees. So it does have a chance to work out for both parties. If the Yankees don't get too uppity about these other guys, right? If they pay fair market value, they're the highest bidder. They don't say we're the Yankees, we don't have to. If they use the money they were going to spend on Juan Soto, on Arenado and Bregman and Fried and a bullpen arm, then they did make it work. But then you have Brian Cashman saying we're not going to be drunken sailors about it. So part of me says they're not going to take every dime that they had offered Juan Soto and spend it throughout the roster. And it feels like anything short of that. And then you go, okay, well, now you don't have, you added Bregman, but you don't have Juan Soto. It has a chance to work out for the Yankees, but they got to be very active, and then they have to acquire multiple pieces to add to their roster to justify, saying we're not going to get in a bidding war. And for the Mets, it represents more than, and that's the other thing. Yeah, $765 million is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Complete overpay for one baseball player. I wholeheartedly agree. But the thing with Soto is not just how good of a player Soto is, it's what he represents. What he represents is a fulfilled promise by the Mets owner to say, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Got David Stearns to be our general manager. We got Lindor a while back. We're acquired all these other players, and now we're getting Juan Soto. I will keep trying everything I can. It's the symbolic gesture of signing Juan Soto, I think, as much as anything else for the Mets. That they're not little brothers anymore. They're an equally evil empire just across town. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, is this the most important game for the Denver Broncos since Super Bowl 50? Welcome in, Drive Time Sports on this Tuesday. Ryan Kaufman with you. You can watch the show live on our social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube. The handle is the same, at XTRA Sports 1300. The number, if you'd like to give your thoughts on the day's topics, 719-247-1313. Some text messages about where the Nuggets go to potentially make a move to answer what the Avs did yesterday, and some thoughts on the Avs acquisition, and I will get to those here in short order. But now we can start to really focus in on the Broncos' job on Sunday. And I can say without equivocation that Sunday is the most significant game for the Denver Broncos franchise since Super Bowl 50. Now, that question has been asked before by me. We've talked about it. But that's the thing. Games can get bigger. But you look at some of these others, ending the losing streak against the Chiefs, ending the losing streak against the Raiders. Those are significant games. Those are checklist items that you feel like if the Broncos are ever going to get back to where you expect them to be, they got to be able to beat those teams, right? Especially the Raiders, but even the Chiefs, right? They can't reasonably expect to achieve the greatest success if they get swept by the Chiefs every year, right? So you have to beat them at some point, and they did. And then they ended a losing streak to the Raiders and doubled down on it by beating them again. Right? They've already shown they can beat the Chargers, so I don't think next week's game holds the significance. It would be a big game for them. But this Sunday is the most significant game since Super Bowl 50, because right now it's a 74-75% chance, and take that for what it's worth. The Broncos' chances as of right now are very good that they're going to make the playoffs. So much so that even if they lose, they still have about a 50-50 shot. But if they win, it's now like 94%. So they can't clinch a playoff spot with a win against the Colts. But it would take a confluence of events that is so unforeseen, given what you have seen from Cincinnati, and by the way, would have been really nice for the Broncos if Dallas would have not lost their minds completely at the end of that game and tried to field a block punt to help the Broncos out a little bit. But I suppose that the Cowboys aren't in the business of helping out the Broncos. They're just trying to put themselves in better position to draft Shedeur. But you don't want to get that way, do you? The Broncos clinching a playoff spot for the first time since the Super Bowl 50 season. You want them to back in. You want them to be sitting on their couch. No, you want this team to be able to go out there, especially at home, and get this thing done. And call me presumptuous. I've certainly been called that a number of times over the past week or so. If the Broncos beat Indy, they're going to the playoffs. I just don't see the confluence of events that would lead to the Denver Broncos, if they took care of business against the Colts, happening to keep them out. Miami not losing another game, Denver not winning another game. Like, I don't see it. Now, if they lose on Sunday, all hope is not lost, but now there are a lot of scenarios that are on the table. They can't clinch Sunday, but they can get damn close. And close enough to, I think, make Broncos fans finally exhale. There's certainly expectation that they're going to find their way in one way or another. You might feel very confident in that, but there's something about this Colts game, and outside of just the percentage chances that they make the playoffs, just this feeling of this is the main competition right now for the playoff spot that the Broncos currently hold. And the Broncos take care of them. And who knows, maybe Miami falters this week. I still don't think that ends up clinching it for the Denver Broncos, but they get to 99% or whatever it is. That just given the opponent, it's not an official clinch if they win on Sunday, but it will feel that way. And to finally be able to say that the Broncos are going to be a playoff team for the first time since they won Super Bowl 50 makes this game the most significant game they've played since the strip sack of Cam Newton. And they, like the Colts have been on a bye, but I will take Sean Payton and Bo Nix with a week to prepare over Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson with a week to prepare. Sean Payton saw this. And it's why he allowed their game against the Chargers to be flex. He looked at the Colts game and the Bengals game and said, those are the ones we have to get. We're going to try to get the Chiefs and the Chargers. Make no mistake about that. But the ones we have to have are those two, Indy and Cincinnati. And maybe by the time they play Cincinnati, it won't matter. That's a possibility. But given the choice at the time to allow the NFL to flex their game with the Chargers into a Thursday night, he was looking at it and saying, the two I got to get, Indy, Cincinnati, and what happens against the Chiefs and the Chargers does not matter as long as we get those two games done. So I would like as much time to get ready for those two games as I could get. I think it was the right call on his part. And we could talk about, as I talked about this yesterday, I think that right now of the possible teams that the Broncos could meet in the first round of the playoffs, I think the most favorable matchup among a bunch of unfavorable matchups is Pittsburgh. To say nothing of how just entertaining that would be to have those teams match up. And how it would be almost payback from the football gods to I didn't really work out in week 2, but here you go. An even bigger stage for Russell Wilson versus the Broncos. That didn't even matter. You could set that aside. Pittsburgh, among a bunch of unfavorable matchups, Steelers are the least unfavorable. But that's the other thing. Broncos really just need to get in. Just get in. 6 seed would be fun. If they were able to take down the Chargers and assume the 6 seed, that's great. That's a great story. Makes you feel even better about the Denver Broncos. But really, the 5th seed is interesting to me, given how the Texans have looked this year. I think you could really look at the Houston game and say, all right, 5-4 matchup. Houston, not nearly what they were last year for whatever reason. Maybe you could talk upset. But the biggest thing is Broncos just got to get in. Just got to get in. And you hope with the improvement that they made over the weeks that they're not going to get absolutely obliterated. As long as they get in and they don't embarrass themselves or get embarrassed, I should say. I don't want to make it seem like the Broncos will go in there and play the worst game of their lives. It's just very possible that they get smacked around by a superior team. As long as they don't get embarrassed, it's all good. But they got to have this one on Sunday. And they should win on Sunday. Again, who do you trust? Bo Nix and Sean Payton or Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson? Oh, and the Broncos defense. I'll take the Broncos to get that done. And then it will be, I don't know, ask next gen, 94% chance or something that they'll make the playoffs. It will feel like they clinched. 719-24-7, 1313. Broncos will be back at work and we'll hear from Bo Nix and Sean Payne and everything coming up tomorrow. Coming up next, want to get to your thoughts. Mackenzie Blackwood, now a member of the Colorado Avalanche. Does that solve their goaltending issues? And do the Nuggets need to make a move? And if so, who do they need to get? Your thoughts next on Extra Sports 1300. One team at Ball Arena has allegedly, supposedly addressed their biggest issue. Well, the other team in Ball Arena, the Mammoth, are perfect. I don't know if I don't want to, it may sound like I'm leaving out the Mammoth. The Mammoth are perfect. They got everything they need to win whatever it is that they seek to win. I'm just talking about the Avs and the Nuggets needing to make moves. Your thoughts at 719 24/7 1313. Tyler texts in, do you think Zion fits here? Funny enough, Tyler, I was contemplating Zion. Because really for no other reason than I'm considering all options. I'm just trying to find somebody that I can bring to you and say, hey, this is an option. And the answer I've come up with is no. How does he fit with Aaron Gordon? I don't think he fits with Aaron Gordon. And I'll use the phrase that I've been using with the Avs goaltending situation to apply to the Nuggets. Consistency and competency. And consistency means availability in this regard, right? Georgiev was hurt for a little bit, but the consistency with him was his play. With Jamal Murray, the consistency has been not there because he's not available, or he's playing and he's not at 100% or not close to it. Zion's the same way. I had high hopes for the Pelicans this year. I really did. I thought they were the team. What the Rockets are doing right now, I thought the Pels were going to do. I like the Rockets, but I really like the Pels. They added DeJounte Murray. I'm like, that team is ready to go. They're not a championship contender, but they're on the rise, and they're a team that's going to be around. And then see what they do with Brandon Ingram down the road. But I like the team they had. Well, Zion's not available. DeJounte Murray has been hurt at times. They've been decimated by injuries. If the Nuggets are going to swing a deal, and it's exactly what I'm talking about with Jimmy Butler, except worse when you're talking about Zion. I don't want the Nuggets to get rid of somebody in Michael Porter Jr. that has shown up every day and done and did the things that he is asked to do. Without him, who shoots three? It's Jokic shooting 3-pointers by himself. And then Russell Westbrook shooting threes. We're going, no. That's it. Nobody else wants to take threes on that team. Michael Porter does. And he does it pretty well. I don't want to trade somebody that, for the most part, I know what I'm going to get every night, good, bad, or indifferent, for somebody that I don't even know is going to be available. And that's the trick here. You got to find somebody that you can rely on. You know the guy with New Orleans that I'd really entertain? It's Herb Jones. Elite wing defender. That would be the guy from New Orleans. And apparently people are calling them. But everything I see is significant haul. And look, some of it is, the information is being leaked by the agent or the team, and it's a very, the Heat expect to get a haul for Jimmy Butler, and the Pelicans expect to get a haul for this guy. And even I saw a report from Anthony Irwin today that says, one, if you want LeBron, you're going to have to take Bronny, and we could talk about whether that's worth it for any team. But also the Lakers want a bunch of pieces that they can jumpstart a rebuild with. Of course, the catch with all of this is LeBron's got to want out. They're not just going to say, hey, LeBron, we're thinking of trading you. It has to be initiated from him. And if you watch the Lakers, maybe, and I said this last year, when the whole Draymond story came down, where he was trying to get coax LeBron into coming to the Golden State Warriors, that was a trial balloon. That was a trial balloon, and that was a way to put pressure on the Lakers organization. For LeBron to say, I didn't really consider it, but I'm kind of considering it. Right? I didn't really consider it. I wasn't really looking to move, but it's not something I dismiss out of hand. That's the message that he was trying to send. And so what did the Lakers do? They got Bronny and JJ Redick, and guess what? They're not better. Amazingly, right? I would have thought drafting Bronny and hiring JJ Redick would make everything better, and it didn't. They still have D'Angelo Russell. They still have Rui Hachimura. They still have Austin Reeves. Dalton Connect, they absolutely hit on. Good on them for Dalton Connect. But as a rookie, how much of a difference can he make? You keep the roster essentially the same, except your two rookies, one of which is not an NBA caliber player. But right now, every rumor you're going to hear is going to have attached to it the idea that the team is looking for a haul, because that's where they are right now, right? The trade deadline's not tomorrow. Right now, it's just cursory phone calls and hypotheticals. And right now, teams that have players that are going to be desired throughout the league are going to ask for the moon. And then as their desire to trade them goes up, they're willing to back off of their initial ask and maybe settle for something a little bit less. But right now, all these teams can ask for everything, which also makes the Nuggets spot predicament tougher because they just don't have enough. These asking prices are going to have to come way down because they just don't have that many tradable assets. And that's why the most likely thing that Calvin Booth does is get a rotational piece that's going to help out the bench and not much else. That's why I keep saying the only way out is through with the guys that the Nuggets have. It's with Jamal Murray returning to form. It's with Christian Brown realizing the vision that Calvin Booth had for him and trying to sell everybody on. And yet the Orlando Magic are going up, 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 and the Nuggets are going down, 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 down. But again, that's what makes what the Avs did yesterday such a great move. They did it before the market really materialized. They found out, they worked at it for weeks, as Chris McFarland said yesterday, and they were able to get out in front of the frenzy, and they were able to get the Sharks to agree to do a deal that is actually quite a reasonable return. I don't look at anything that the Avs did or gave up in that deal and say that's too much. It's a lot of stuff to make it happen. It would have been cleaner to just have Georgiev and a pick with some salary retention for Mackenzie Blackwood, but they had to do a swap and another second-round pick, and it's a lot of stuff, but I don't know if it's anything that you're really too torn up that the Avalanche gave up, especially considering what they received. And that's why, in addition to a lot of things, why that was such a great move from Chris McFarland. Albert, on the topic of Mackenzie Blackwood and his fit with the Colorado Avalanche, Albert says goalies play with a rhythm and cadence. Some like to be busy and thrive when seeing lots of shots. Logic would dictate that Blackwood will let in fewer goals if he sees fewer shots. But as you correctly stated, building a roster, putting together players isn't perfect. It will be interesting to see how comfortable he will be backstopping a more talented team. The move makes sense on paper. It'll be fun to watch how it looks on the ice. And it's a great point, right? I mean, maybe Maybe Mackenzie Blackwood has lapses in concentration when there is a prolonged amount of time where he doesn't see the puck. But everything you say is absolutely right, Albert. But you have to do this deal. Right? Maybe in the end, it doesn't work out the way we all think it will. But the Avs had to make this move. They couldn't keep relying on Alexander Georgiev. So I guess I would spin it this way. What's more likely? That Mackenzie Blackwood will be better than Alexander Georgiev or worse? And I think you'd have to say it's much more likely that he's better. Could he be the same? Maybe. But if he's the same, then you're in the same spot you were in, but at least you tried something. Right? And I go back to what I talked about in the opening segment. Like, you can't just wait for things to be better. You have to try and do something. And the Avs have shown the willingness to do things. Not everything I have agreed with that they have done. Not everything they have done has worked out. But the one thing I can say about the Avalanche front office is they have not been shy about trying to rectify a mistake or trying to address a need that pops up. And they don't just sit back and hope that things get better. Now, there are a couple of examples that are exceptions to the rule. Gabriel Landeskog is one that I feel like they haven't maybe been as impatient as they should be, but they've also been able to utilize LTIR. So are they really being too patient with Gabriel Landeskog? I've said after this season, they really need to move on it. Valeri Nichushkin is another one. But then you ask, well, what could they have reasonably done in the interim while he's suspended by the league to try and move him? But on the whole, I would say that this Avalanche team, when they have the means to be able to do something, to address a need, or to rectify a mistake, they will do it. And you can't say that about every team in the NHL. You can't say that about every team in Colorado. I mean, look at the Denver Broncos. Right? I know it wasn't Sean Payton who signed Russell Wilson, but they are going to be held up as a shining example. I think both here locally and across the league of, look at Cleveland. I'd be very interested to see what Cleveland does with Deshaun Watson. The Broncos, Sean Payne specifically, saw Russell Wilson. Okay. Maybe he's not washed. Maybe he is. But saw him and is like, it's not right. It's just there's something off about it. Diminished as a player, the type of player he is, the fit he is in the locker room. And I'm sure it's a combination of many of those things. But Sean Payne looked at it and he said, it's just not right. It's just not right. And we got to move off of him. And they had a plan in place. It's abundantly clear now they wanted Bo Nix for a very long time, but they had the plan in place, and maybe the plan was going to blow up in their face. But at least they had the courage to say, this is not our guy, and we got to move. And that's what Chris McFarland did yesterday. He moved on it quicker than a lot of people would expect. You got to be able to do those things. You can't just sit there and hope that things get better or hope that something turns into the right fit. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. So now that the college football playoff bracket has been announced, you got to wait a little while before the playoff actually starts. So this would be a dead period in the college football calendar, if not for the transfer portal. Transfer portal in full gear. CU's got players leaving. CU's probably going to get players through the transfer portal. It's all very exciting. Unless you're Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin, who has not been shy about sharing his thoughts on a variety of topics, now that there's nothing he can do about getting his Ole Miss team into the college football playoff, has turned his attention to the transfer portal. And he said that having the transfer portal open up before the bowl season is, let me make sure I get this right. The adjective he used was dumb, a dumb system. Portal before bowl is flaw of, quote, dumb system. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. Why? I mean, I keep thinking back, if the NCAA and its member institutions were just not greedy you-know-whats and just saw the writing on the wall and understood that their relationship with the student athletes was just not going to hold up forever. That at some point they were going to have to relinquish this, get rid of this antiquated idea of amateurism and face facts, that they were going to have to start compensating players. They were going to have to allow them a little bit more freedom of movement. And if they just would have seen that and said, you know what, we can still have an impact on this, we could still control it and guide us into a better system, they're like, nope, you're going to have to pry amateurism from our cold, dead hands. So we did. And now it's an absolute bleep show. I have no problem with the transfer portal. I think that if you're in it 2 or 3 times, then you're just a mercenary. And I don't think, I saw a great tweet. I don't know who did it. It was just, Elon pushed it into my feed and he's like, I think you'll like this, Ryan. And I was like, Elon, you know what? You're right. It's just somebody that said, I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you enter the transfer portal after every year of college football, it's not God's plan. Everyone's like, God's plan. I'm going to God's plan. And I'm not downing anybody. I'm not trying to poke fun at anybody's beliefs. I'm just saying the transfer portal was never meant for you to go from one school to the next, year in and year out, always looking for the better deal. The intent of opening up the transfer portal to where you could move without consequence, you don't have to sit out a year, was to not penalize guys that, or ladies, because this happens especially in women's college basketball, the number of Air Force games I've called, and like half the team that Air Force goes up against is all transfers. And I'm okay with it. But the intent is for the people who got kind of the rug pulled out from under them or made a decision at a young age and maybe it wasn't quite the right decision. So they're kind of given a mulligan, so to speak. Like, that's what the transfer portal's supposed to be. And I would think that the transfer portal is supposed to be one part of the calendar, confined like almost NFL free agency, right? NFL free agency really wraps up in like 2 weeks, but even like a month, right? And it's outside of the season, and you have the example of how it should work right in front of you. So one level above you. After all these bowls are over, before spring ball, I know football is football and we got to practice in the spring and the fall and the winter and the summer and 2-a-days and 3-a-days and walkthroughs and OTAs. I get it. But can't you fit the transfer portal between the college football national championship and spring ball? Is there not enough time to be able to do this? And it's the same with signing. You know, when Juju Lewis signed with the Buffs, it's like this guy's been flirting with the Buffs for like a year and a half, it feels like. How long is this guy allowed to make his decision and flip-flop and everything? It's like none of this is what it was supposed to be. But we know who's to blame for the dumb system. NCAA and its member institutions. And I long for the day that college football is not this scene out of Mad Max. Like it's regimented, it's organized, there's a method to the madness, and right now it's just madness. Lane Kiffin's exactly right. And it just right now, you lament that nobody was progressive enough to see the writing on the wall and to put guardrails in place. And then the Supreme Court does what they do, and they don't care what happens after that. They're just making a ruling. It's like nobody is there to kind of rein this all in. And it's nuts. Absolutely nuts. And it's not what this was intended for. Put the transfer portal after the college football playoff. And I get for basketball, it's going to be different. For every sport, it's going to be different. But we're talking about football. And after the college football national championship, before spring ball. Can't you get it done in that amount of time? And to the athletes, you really need to start examining yourself if you're jumping into the portal every single year. Because either you're being greedy and trying to maximize whatever dollar amount, and there is a line here, right? There's a line between getting what you deserve and being compensated for your services, and just looking for the best deal all the time, regardless of where it is, who you're playing for, whatever it is. You're just like, I'm going to just keep jumping in. And if it's not about getting the most money, and it legitimately is finding a better situation every year, then you really need to question your decision-making skills. Because if you leave, it's okay. You go one place out of high school and you're like, this isn't the place for me. Fine. Go. And there are exceptions to every rule. Tyler Brown for CU was a great example. Right? He wasn't jumping from one. He went and followed Dion. And they want to follow Dion again. It's a different situation. And there are there are exceptions to every rule. But if you're going into the transfer portal, I would hope that the next place you land, you do a little bit more research. And you talk with the coach a little bit more. And you get a feel for campus and the system and everything like that. That's just, nobody is doing what it was intended to be. And it's not going to end. And part of me feels like, why do I keep bringing this up? Because it's the reason why it's crazy is always been the same reason. It's the same people to blame. And it's not going to get fixed for a very long time. It is a dumb system. The intent of it, the heart of it is good. And I agree with it. And it's the same with NIL. What NIL was supposed to be, I thought was a great idea. But because there were no regulations on it, there are no guardrails on it, it becomes nuts. And do you see Jay Norvell? I very much appreciate Jay Norvell. Like and the thing about Braden Fowler, Nicolosi, I still believe maybe he was stretching the truth a little bit. But Torrey Horton, I'd 100% believe it. I'd 100% believe that they had teams that were trying to get Torrey Horton to transfer, and we're going to pay him that much money. Nicolosi, I don't know if I agree. But I love that Jay Norvell just is telling. And yesterday I saw a video, Will Compton shared it, where he's talking about how NIL agents take 20%, which is like 17% more than NFL agents take from their clients. It's like this system, we went from a broken system to a broken system. It's just broken in other ways. And I long for the day where they get the reins on it, if they ever do. But you got it. But here's the other part. You can call it dumb. You can hate it. You got to figure out a way through it. And we focus a lot on Deion Sanders and the way he approaches these things. And nationally, there are a lot of programs that are talked about more. But, I mean, every time I hear Kenny Dillingham talk, I'm just like, the dude gets it. And ASU is a better story this year than CU. They're picked dead last. And they won the conference. They're in the college football playoff. And they, out of obviously, Oregon, you probably don't want to play. Georgia, you don't want to play. Although Carson Beck, we'll see what happens there. But Oregon, you definitely don't want to play. ASU's that proverbial team that you don't want to play. I wouldn't want to match up with ASU. But I saw him talking the other day that he's allowing, and I'm sure he hates it, but he's allowing his guys to go into the portal. He's like, no, go into the portal, put your name in, see what's out there, and we'll help you find someplace. And then you could come back to us and you can help us win a national title. Like, he just gets it. And he's just that breed. And Deion Sanders is this way too. I don't know that they like what college football is, but they don't really complain about it as much as some other people, Lane Kiffin. And they lean into it. They say, I can't do anything about this, so I'm going to try and make the best of it. And it's those kind of coaches that are being successful. And Dillingham and Deion Sanders, who came in at the same time, represent that. And they're not the only ones, but they're the one, we're in Big 12 country now, after all. They get it. And every time Kenny Dillingham talks, I'm like, he absolutely understands how he could be successful in this new day and age of college athletics. It's smart. Everything he says is really smart. And he probably grits his teeth in his mind when he says it, because he hates the fact that some of his players, as he's getting ready to try and win a national championship, that is possible for Arizona State to win a national title. And he's got to deal with this. Lane Kiffin's complaining about a dumb system, and what bowl are they playing in? They're not playing the college football playoff. Dillingham has more of a right to call it a dumb system, and yet here he is leaning into it. Lane Kiffin's not wrong, but there's a way to handle it to have success. And I wonder where Bill Belichick is going to fit into all this. Because reports out of North Carolina, nothing, ESPN official, but reports out of North Carolina that Bill Belichick will get the job at North Carolina. And Bill Belichick's been on a media tour, Pat McAfee show. He was on his show, Let's Go, that used to be Brady, saying that college is more like the NFL. I'd be curious to see how he handles it. Because this idea that, oh, it's Belichick, and I saw Tom Brady and Julian Edelman joking about this on Fox on Sunday. Like, they're just, that he's going to be, almost make a dynamic where the players are going to long to play for Bill Belichick. Like, Bill Belichick is not going to cater to these players and keep asking them, like, how much do I have to give you for you to come here? I don't know if that's going to work quite as well as some may think. I think that Belichick could work, not to make North Carolina a national power, but, to compete on a yearly basis in the ACC, I think is realistic. He's not going to make a program better than Dabo, I don't think. But if nothing else, it will be a fascinating experiment. And I'm here for that experiment. Like, I'm more intrigued by the Bill Belichick experiment in college football than I am Bill Belichick coming back to the NFL. Be great to see him back in the NFL. I'd love to see him give it one more go without Tom Brady and seeing if he can pass Don Shula. But just from a interest level, fascinating. We'll see. I mean, Nick Saban got out of the business because of what college football had turned into. And if he and Belichick are clones of one another, Deion Sanders is very similar to Nick Saban, except in some crucial ways that I think allow him to have an appetite to compete in today's college football, but also to thrive. I don't know that Belichick's that much different than Saban. I still think there's a little pandering that has to go on, and I don't know if he can be exactly the way he was in the NFL. But whatever tact he's going to take with North Carolina, I'd love to see it. And I think that's what North Carolina is doing. North Carolina is doing much the same thing that Colorado did. And just saying, you know what? What have we got to lose? We bring in this guy that's going to have some brand recognition, going to have some cachet, going to get our fan base excited, going to be good for a few recruits. There got to be a few that are going to love the idea of playing for Belichick. And we give it a shot. See what happens. I think there's a lot of that with North Carolina. And as I've thought about it, I like the idea of Belichick in college football more than I like him in the NFL. And I'd be intrigued to see him back in the NFL. 719-247-1313. We'll hit the three stories that are driving the show after this. Hello there. Welcome in. Drive Time Sports on a Tuesday. Ryan Kaufman with you, and I'm glad to have you. Whether you're listening on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. Coming up at 6 o'clock, it will be the Frank Serratori Show as Frank Serratori and Jay Ritchie discuss a very eventful and fruitful weekend for the Air Force hockey team as now they head into the holiday break. In the meantime, you and I can chat. The number for you to reach out, 719-247-1313. You can text or call it. Right now, it's time for the three stories that are driving the show. Story number one is that the Colorado Avalanche are moments away from dropping the puck against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And while Mackenzie Blackwood will not be in goal tonight, it will be Wedgwood, not Blackwood, and not Miles Wood. The Avs acquisition of a goaltender is very much still in the conversation. In fact, I'm watching the broadcast right now, and they were just putting up a graphic of Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood. So eventually we'll see Mackenzie Blackwood in goal for the Avs. But as I think more about that deal, the biggest thing that sticks out to me is how quickly the Avs moved. Chris McFarland spoke yesterday about how alarming, and that wasn't his word, but how concerning the start to the season was. He said it shook them to see them come out after he had spoken about how important it was for this team to earn points right out of the gate and to look so bad, specifically in goal, right out of the gate. And I think right then and there, that's when Chris McFarland was like, we probably got to do something about this. And it took some time, but they end up still kind of getting ahead of the market in acquiring Mackenzie Blackwood. And that's something that needs to be commended because there are too many front offices across sports that will just wait and wait and wait and hope that things get better. Chris McFarland saw what you and I saw. That what they were getting from Alexander Georgiev, if Darcy Kemper is now the gold standard, right? Patrick Waugh is the gold standard. But if it's we won a Stanley Cup with this level of goaltending, he saw, just like you and I did, that Alexander Georgiev was not giving them that level of goaltending. And he expected it to. Right? They acquired Alexander Georgiev expecting him to be that. And in some ways, it was a mistake for the Avs to believe that. But in life, it's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to either compound them or to do nothing about them and just hope it gets better. And the Avalanche have shown, not just with this move, but with many moves, that even if they make the wrong decision, Ryan Johansson, Alexander Georgiev, they will work to fix it as quickly as they can because they don't want to spoil the championship window that they have. This is what it looks like to maximize the window. There's another team in Denver that just wants to extend it. It's not just good enough to extend it. You have to maximize what you have in the window, or else that window will always close faster than you think it will. And the Avs act as if, yes, they're trying to open the window, right, for as long as they can, but they're also acting like it may slam shut at any moment if they do not do what is necessary to maximize the window that they have open. And that's what yesterday's move represented. Now, conversely, many people are asking what the Nuggets do. What is their version of Mackenzie Blackwood? What can they do to put themselves back in the conversations that they were in before the season started as a serious NBA championship contender? And one name that has been bandied about is Jimmy Butler. The Miami Heat, unable to get what they want in exchange for Tyler Hero, are now pivoting, supposedly, according to Shams Charania, in offering Jimmy Butler up in trades and seeing what the appetite out there is for his services. Now, Jimmy Butler would only probably work on a few teams because Jimmy Butler will not go anywhere where he doesn't have a chance to win a title. The Nuggets have a chance. As down on them as I was after Saturday, they still have a chance to win a title. So I'm sure the Nuggets would appeal to some extent to Jimmy Butler. I don't know that this should be the direction. Jimmy Butler is not the Nuggets' Mackenzie Blackwood. Because you're essentially bringing in another player that can be unreliable in terms of his availability, can be a bit mercurial when it comes to his attitude on a nightly basis. And he's somebody that at times isn't too bothered by anything that happens in the regular season and waits until the postseason to bring his A game every night. And that is exactly what Jamal Murray is. And exactly why many people are turning on him. So you want to bring in another player that's exactly like that, except older and more banged up? The Nuggets can't just make a move to make a move. And they can't just find the highest profile guy that they can get and expect it to work. It's nuanced. There are levels to this. There are layers to this. Jimmy Butler, to me, does not make sense. It just doesn't. And knowing full well that you're not replacing, a younger Jimmy Butler with Jimmy Butler, you're taking somebody else, namely Michael Porter Jr., to bring in an older version of Jamal Murray. If the Nuggets are going to make a move and shake this roster up, I would prefer they look in a direction of somebody that's a little bit more predictable. Because as much as we love when Jamal Murray's at his best, he has been quite infuriating over the last, since the Wolves series. I don't know that the best thing for the Nuggets is to bring in another player who has a lot of those same traits. He's not the answer to me. But I don't see a clear answer right now. And I am not I don't know all the ins and outs of the salary cap and the luxury tax. Maybe there's something that Calvin Booth can do. But the fact that the prevailing rumor is he'll trade Zeke Najee and a first-round pick for a rotational piece tells me that the Nuggets don't have many options. If we're looking at a way for the Nuggets to act like the Avs, it would be trading Jamal Murray. It would be. Can't trade him till March. So really, if they're going to make a significant deal, it's going to cost Michael Porter and then some. Because anything else they're able to do is not going to excite you. Not the way that Mackenzie Black, if that's now the standard here. Now, the Nuggets can make a move and it be a good move. But I don't see them being able to make a move that we're looking at the same way we're looking at the Avs deal yesterday. I just don't see how they pull off that kind of a move. Can they make their team better? They better. They better find a way to make their team better, but can they make it better in the same significant way that the Avs appear to have or have given themselves a chance to? I don't see it. And certainly Jimmy Butler does not do that. Story number 3. The Mountain West today has made another acquisition. So everybody's making moves except the Denver Nuggets. The Mountain West is acquiring UC Davis to join them as an every sport except football member. So this is much the same as the Grand Canyon thing. This tells me that if Sacramento State does turn Division I in football, they're going to the Pac-12. Same part of the country, but not the more desirable of the two institutions. But I don't know how they're going to sort all this stuff out. I still think that the best course of action is just for whatever is bothering the Pac-12 and the Mountain West to just figure it out and merge. I don't see either conference being strong enough to withstand the forces that are at play in college athletics. But combining your forces gives you a little bit more of a chance. But Mountain West adding UC Davis to the mix. In fact, today, Air Force released its conference opponents, and a lot of them are on the Air Force schedule for the last time. Because some of the schools that Air Force will be playing in conference play next year, including Boise State, will then the next year be scheduled to be in the Pac-12. But I was thinking about this with the college football playoff. Now, I'll take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. 719-247-1313. I'll take a break, but when I come back, I want to talk about this. And it has to do with the college football playoff and conference realignment and all the bickering and complaining that is going on from one school in one conference. Avs on the board, 1-0. They lead the Pittsburgh Penguins. Just under 13 minutes left in the opening period. I'll only give you one guess at who scored the goal. I think you'd be able to get it with that one guess. Pause for dramatic effect and to allow you to guess. Nathan MacKinnon scores the first goal on the second shot of the game. And Colton was skating in, and they stopped play. Looking like he was going to get a goal. Yeah, just a shot from the left circle. Nathan MacKinnon. He's really good at hockey. Avs lead 1-0. Again, Scott Wedgwood in goal tonight. He has made 2 saves for the Avs. In the wake of the college football playoff bracket being announced and Alabama being left out, they are certainly the loudest. And look, they and Miami were identified as the last 2 teams out. So it would make sense that Alabama is one of the loudest because they were on the cusp, and there was a real discussion of whether SMU or Alabama was going to get in. But isn't it quite ironic that a lot of conference realignment could be traced back to Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, a move that I would imagine Alabama was okay with? And now Texas is an SEC team that is better than Alabama. And one of the losses, even though Alabama is trying to gaslight everybody into thinking that it was because of their non-conference schedule that they didn't get in when they lost all their losses were in the SEC, that they lost to Oklahoma. So the SEC started conference realignment as we know it, like this absolute storm of just everybody jumping ship from one place to another. It started with Oklahoma and Texas. And in a roundabout way, the SEC poaching the Big 12, which led to all this conference realignment a couple years later, leads to Alabama being denied what they feel they are entitled to. They wouldn't have Oklahoma on their schedule. Texas wouldn't be in their conference. As the program with the most pull in the SEC, I would imagine that Alabama was cool with it and said, well, it's okay, we'll crush them. And now here they are, and starting conference realignment as we know it, or being the first domino to fall, has now cost Alabama college football playoff spot. Is that poetic? I don't know. I'm not a poet. I don't read a lot of poetry. Feels poetic. The SEC and Alabama were patient zero in this latest wave of conference realignment, and in the end, it cost them. Really feels poetic. 719-247-1313. Brett says, oh my God, I think we should trade Jamal Murray as well, but that would leave a gaping hole at point guard and shooting guard, neither which he has ever been. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, here's the trade that I thought of, and the money doesn't really exactly work, but just go with me for a moment. Jamal Murray for Trae Young. Who says no? Like that kind of a deal is what I'm thinking. I understand that the reality is you're probably going to have to give up Michael Porter to really change the complexion of this team. Just from a practical standpoint, he is tradable right now, and he has value right now. But I don't want the Nuggets to trade Michael Porter. Unless they can get a player that's better than Michael Porter. And in order to do that, you would have to include something else, which the Nuggets have none of. So strictly, I don't know if the Hawks would go for it, because that's the other issue, is that Jamal Murray's trade value is pretty low at this point. But I try to play in this world, this Bill Simmons world, where he just makes up trades and everybody loves it. I'm trying to do that. Focus groups say I need to dabble in more fictitious trades. Here's me trying to. And in my head, I'm like, the money doesn't work. The Hawks would say no. And I'm finding 18 ways to say no, but just from the Nuggets standpoint. And that's it. Trae Young for Jamal Murray? Trae Young's more available, isn't he? Trae Young's had big moments in the playoffs. I saw another one. I don't take credit for this one. De'Aaron Fox for Jamal Murray. Again, money doesn't work, and I think the Kings would say no, but right now we're only looking out for the best interest of the Nuggets. Now, if it was a move like that, then I think it's similar to the Blackwood trade for the Colorado Avalanche. It's identifying an issue. That's why I said Herb Jones for Michael Porter is a little bit more palatable. But even when I look at that deal, I say, okay, Herb Jones, more of a defender. Michael Porter's not. The offense with Nikola Jokic, maybe they can make it work. But then I go back to, well, didn't you have a player like Herb Jones? Maybe not as good, but you had a player. He was Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And it just goes back, like, the Nuggets have, the thought process was sound. Right? I thought there were a lot of good ideas coming out of the Nuggets organization, but you got to execute. And if you don't execute, you better figure out a way to get out of it. But yeah, I'm thinking De'Aaron Fox for Jamal Murray, Trae Young for Jamal Murray. But then I'm like, De'Aaron Fox, I think, fits exactly. Better defender, right? Swipe a Fox. But again, can't trade him in March. By then, it might be too late. I think it is too late for the trade deadline. Can't be, right? Trade deadline's got to be later than that. But you can't trade him now. And I'm still not entertaining Russell Westbrook being the starter. I'm sorry, I can't. And maybe I'm being super stubborn about the whole thing, but I just, no. No, Russell Westbrook should be, let's get the players that are on the roster to do the jobs they're supposed to do. Let's start there. Russell Westbrook is a bench player. But I don't know. Check with me in a couple weeks, because my resolve on this issue is waning by the nanosecond. 719-247-1313. Avs still up 1-0. Scott Wedgwood hasn't allowed a goal in gosh, I don't know, like a billion minutes. Keep you updated on that game. Frank Serratori show coming up at the top of the hour. First, though, want to ask you something. Are you really going to start this new year, 2025, coming up right around the corner, right? We're all focused on Christmas and then boom, New Year's here. You're really going to start the new year dealing with that same old joint pain that bothered you all of 2024? Why? Well, is it because you've been told surgery's your only option? Pain pills, and you're like, I don't love those? And I understand the sentiment, but there's an alternative. It's QC Kinetics. Their local medical professionals are waiting for you. Their advanced protocols in regenerative medicine have helped tens of thousands of people get lasting relief because they treat the root cause. They don't just treat the pain. They don't just give you, like, you go into a car and you get, something fixed, but eventually it's going to break again. This is actually treating the root cause of your pain. Imagine a year without those achy joints and not using pain pills or steroid shots. That's pretty great, right? How about using the healing properties of your own body to attack the root cause of your pain? That's what QC Kinetics does. So if you've been told surgery is your best or only option, you deserve a second opinion. Find out if all natural regenerative medicine is right for you at QC Kinetics. The consultation is free. You can use HSA and FSA dollars. 719-347-1988. 719-347-1988. QC Kinetics. 719-347-1988. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and we want to make it even better with $1,000 towards your winter wish list. Use it for shopping, travel, or to treat yourself. You know, nobody gives you better gifts than yourself. Enter this national contest on extrasports1300.com for a chance to fulfill your winter wish list, sponsored locally by Downtown Colorado Springs and Downtown CS.com. File this one under Not My Hump. Remember when Sean Payton was asked about winning a game where they led at halftime for the first time in like 3 seasons? He says, not my hump. I feel like asking Sean Payton about the significance of getting the first winning record since 2016, it is in the same vein. Right? Like, let me ask, because, sometimes I feel like I'm in touch with Broncos country. Sometimes I prove to not be. Have you given a single thought about, wow, the Broncos might have a winning record for the first time since 2016? Like, maybe you thought about that before the season started? But I mean, how long have we been legitimately talking about the playoffs with this team? We are so far beyond a winning record being some kind of an achievement. Credit to them. They blew right past that. We talked about that at the beginning of the season. Can they get a winning record? And then fast forward like 6 weeks later, and it's like, forget that. We're talking about a lot of other stuff. And for the last month, it's been playoffs. And that's a credit to the Denver Broncos. In fact, I saw Sean Payton's quote, which I suppose I should read. I don't know that one person downstairs, myself included, has thought about right now this team just having a winning season. And then he does the thing that he does when he hates a question. He said, I understand the question and I appreciate it, but I think our aspirations are a little higher. You know what Sean Payton reminds me of? When Jim and Pam go to marriage counseling, which, by the way, the worst arc in Office history. I hated everything about that. Where like Jim joins athlete and Pam and him are constantly fighting, and then like the boom mic operator. If you don't watch The Office, I apologize. Okay, because none of this is going to make sense. But I feel like The Office is popular enough that I'm reaching most of my audience with this. And then the boom mic guy, who's also the pretentious billionaire on Silicon Valley, is like consoling her because she's crying. And like, I hated that it was terrible. Terrible. Jim and Pam are the fairy tale romance of a sitcom. I don't need the downside. Don't give me the downside. I don't need it. I don't need the heaviness as The Office is drawing to close. It's bad enough that Michael Scott's not around anymore. Anyway, when they were going through marriage counseling, and there was that episode where they had to say, they had to understand, and if anyone's gone through marriage counseling, maybe this is a real thing where you have to acknowledge and appreciate the sacrifices that the other person makes for you. Like, that's what it feels like when Sean Payton hates a question. He's like, I understand and I appreciate the question, which is to say, I hate it. This is an opportunity. That was the other thing. Everything's an opportunity. Anyway, Sean Payton, when he hates a question, he says, good question. He says, I appreciate the question. He says, I understand the question. When he says those three things, you know that he means the polar opposite. He just does. And if you are in the media throng that covers the Denver Broncos and are asking those questions, and he says one of those things, you should go home that night and you should really think about what you have done. Did I do the best I could at work today? Because I asked Sean Payne a question and he said he appreciated it, but I know what that means. It means he doesn't appreciate it and he doesn't like my question. But who's thinking of this? I just said earlier, if the Broncos win this game, they have a 94% chance of making the playoffs. Yes, they will have a 100% chance that they have a winning record. Nobody's thinking about that. And that's the whole thing. Like, the other part about the Nuggets being, somebody comes up to me and says, well, at least the Nuggets are the 7th seed. How is that acceptable? How is that acceptable given where this team was not that long ago and what they're supposed to be and what they have said they are? It's not acceptable. Yes, I know that means they're a play-in team and they technically would have a path to the postseason. It's not acceptable. And that's the entire premise here with the Blackwood trade and with the Nuggets and all the discussion around them. And I'll extend it to the Broncos and this, question about is it significant to you that you're going to, with a win, have a winning record? It's like, it's so expectations go up. And just being good enough is not good enough. The Nuggets right now are good enough, which is a crazy sentence to say, considering that Nikola Jokic is having the best year of his life. And they're just good enough, but it's not good enough. Expectations are higher, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing that the Broncos, the Nuggets, and the Avalanche, to whatever degree they have raised the bar to the point that these little things like a winning record and being in a playoff spot, if the season ended today, it's not good enough. It's not the new goal. And it's a credit to these teams that there are bigger goals that are in front of them. But the idea that somehow if the Broncos win this game and go on to lose the rest of their games, that 9-8 is going to be viewed as this smashing, massive success? Absolutely not. Now, can you look at this season and the positives will outweigh the negatives? Sure. This team was not supposed to be nearly like this. But it's like with Deion Sanders last year and CU. The start that they had raised expectations, and the fact that they got their doors blown off on a weekly basis in the Pac-12 meant that there was a level of disappointment because they were supposed to be better than that. Once they had the start to the season they did, expectations went up. And if you don't want to deal with expectations, then you're in the wrong business if you're coaching a team. You should want that. You should want the fans to be like, oh, now we could do this. But yeah, last year was overall a positive for Deion Sanders. But the way they finished the season was an awful disappointment. It's almost like you ask Sean Payton 9-8 as if you're building in, hey, if this whole playoff thing doesn't work out, at least we'll be able to have Sean Payton on the record saying it's a good thing or a big deal that they finished with their first winning record since 2016. It's not. That's the least of what they can accomplish from here on out. It's a credit to them, but like this, If they finish 9-8 amidst the playoffs, trust me, I am not going to be singing the praises of the Denver Broncos. The number one storyline will be how they screwed up so badly that they, as of today, had a 74% chance of making the playoffs with an upcoming home game against a team they are better than, with the chance to make it 94%. And they lose. And like somewhere along the way, they beat the Bengals and they get 9-8. Oh, it's all better. No, it's not. You know, as a sports market, we kind of been in between. We're not quite as laid back as they are in like California. I'm not talking about the Lakers, but you know, there are fan bases and there are parts of the country where, you know, everyone's kind of chill about everything. Oh, they had a good season. They didn't have a great season. Whatever. And then there's the ultra intense markets like Philadelphia and New York that they want to fire everybody after every 3-game losing streak. And we're neither. But if I had to pick one end of the spectrum to live on, and I've talked about this in the past, I'd like to be more like Philadelphia and New York. I'd like the teams that I cover and the teams that I root for to be held to a higher standard. Nuggets being the 7 seed is not at all acceptable. The Avalanche just getting into the playoffs is not acceptable. The Denver Broncos at this point just having a winning record, it's not good enough. They should make the playoffs. They have every opportunity to make the playoffs. They have a better chance of making the playoff than certainly CU did last year. Right? And there was still disappointment over the way the Buffs finished that season. And this isn't even like last year. Last year, that New England game killed off the Broncos' chances of making the playoffs. But even if they won that, it was still a narrow margin for error. It was still going to be an uphill climb to get in. That just ended it. That was just an unceremonious way to have your playoff hopes dash. But it was still not looking like the Broncos were going to make the playoffs. Or at least it would be more difficult for them to make the playoffs having won that game against New England than it is this year for them. This year, there's not even a realistic possibility. Like, if they win on Sunday, it's to foregone conclusion territory that they make the playoffs. And it would take the most epic of collapses, as well as the Miami Dolphins not losing another game. How big of a deal is 9-8? I don't know. 2 years ago, maybe it was a big deal. Last year, maybe 9-8 would have been a big deal. In fact, I think it would have been. They beat New England, but they fall short of the playoffs, understanding that it was going to be difficult still for them to get in. 9-8 might be celebrated. First winning season. I know Sean Payton wouldn't celebrate it, but some people would. This year, no way. A winning record at this point is the bare minimum of what the Broncos should be accomplishing. And by the way, I'm glad to hear Sean Payton do his I appreciate the question, which means he doesn't appreciate it. Like, he's saying the same thing. Like, look at what position we're in. What do we care about a winning record? We got bigger goals than this. We're not hanging a banner for 9-8 for the first time since 2016. I like Sean Payton's reaction to it, and I agree with it. Avs now up 2-0, first intermission in Pittsburgh. So even though Mackenzie Blackwood not with the team yet, his influence and his impact still being felt. The Avs are playing inspired hockey, knowing that Mackenzie Blackwood is soon to arrive. And Scott Wedgwood right now has not surrendered a goal, which means the first shot of the second period, Penguins will cut the deficit in half. Because I have learned over the years, I have that kind of power. That'll be just about it for me. One other thing I want to impart to you before I go. If you felt like you've lost more than just a step or two, could be low testosterone. It's not your fault. It happens. But what will be your fault is if you don't be proactive about it and don't get your levels checked by the experts at Low T Center. They have over a decade of experience with testosterone therapy, or TRT, and for established patients, they offer an at-home TRT treatment that includes both lab testing and medication. It's a personalized treatment plan tailored to you, not just the basic standard treatment offered by some providers. And the at-home TRT plan ships directly to your door. So go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointment. lowtcenter.com, reinventing men's healthcare. It's been my pleasure to serve you on this Tuesday. I look forward to meeting again tomorrow. Don't forget, coming up at the top of the hour, Frank Serratori show. Going to be talking about that Niagara series. I talked about the way they responded on Saturday after Friday. Very impressive, and they head into the break on the highest of notes. And you'll hear Frank and Jay talk more about it coming up next here on Extra Sports 1300.